Welcome everyone to the May 2024 Marketing Town Hall webinar. I'm your host, Jeremy Doof, co-founder of Synergy Reach, and in terms of my background, I specialize in lead generation, sales, and automation. Today, we're going to have a lot of interesting insights from Chevy, and he's going to be answering your questions. Before we do begin, though, I do want to go over the rules of engagement for this webinar, just so everyone's on the same page about how we operate and how we do things. That way, we make it as valuable as possible for everyone that's a part of it. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll cover the rules of engagement. All right. Let me expand this. Okay, so first, let's talk about who benefits from this webinar. Who is this for? This webinar is intended as a question and answer session for business owners, CEOs, executives, and decision makers who are already engaged in sales and marketing efforts. At the same time, we have lately expanded this webinar out to people that are managers, that are entry level marketing specialists, that are just curious about a better understanding related to marketing. So we have expanded out the questions and how Chevy even answers it. It's more applicable to more of a broader range of individuals. Here are our rules of engagement. First, raise your hand. If you have a question, please raise your hand and you'll be added to the queue. In other words, you can decide if you want to join in as a panelist to be on video, or you can just ask your question in the questions and answers chat, right? You can just type it in and then we'll see it and we'll go ahead and answer it. So you can raise your hand to be brought on as a panelist, but you can also just ask your questions on the questions and answers chat. Um, Go ahead and just introduce yourself, right? Say your name, your position, your company name. Some people choose to be anonymous. That's totally fine. We accept that as well. Saying your industry does help for context because sometimes when Chevy answers questions, one answer to one industry may be a certain thing, and then another industry it's a little bit different just because they're different industries. Question format. Out of respect for everyone on the call, please limit your questions to 30 seconds or less, just so everyone has an opportunity to ask questions, time permitting. Some questions require a lot of nuance to it, so we ask for you to kind of limit the time. That way, we can get to as many questions as possible. For follow-up questions, feel free to ask any clarifying or follow-up questions after Chevy answers your original question. Again, just keep it to under 30 seconds. It's natural to have a clarifying question at times because he may bring up a topic and you may need some clarification on that new topic that's brought up. Webinar decorum. Please refrain from interrupting or adding your own comments. When questions are asked, our CMO Chevy will provide the answers. So again, that just goes back to making things as valuable as possible. Distractions. To maintain a distraction-free webinar for attendees, please remain muted if you are not engaged in conversation. If you're having difficulty muting yourself, myself or my co-host, Kevin, will go ahead and help you out and mute you. Self-promotion. Please refrain from self-promotion. We may remove an attendee from the webinar if they engage in promoting themselves or their company and do not follow the rules, right? So again, just going back to making this very valuable town hall style where everyone can take away a lot of things from it. All right, so that was our webinar decorum and our rules of engagement. Right now, I'm very happy to introduce Chevy Shafee to the webinar. Welcome to the webinar, Chevy.
Is this my cue to enter stage left?
Yep, he's here. He's here. Hey, Chevy, how's it going?
Jeremy. Good, brother. Good.
We'd love to know a bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, just to reiterate the Q&A, definitely, I want people to join in, ask as many questions. That's really the format of this. And before I tell you a lot about myself, let me tell you a little bit more about the concept that we have here. So my name is Chevy. I'm the Senior Chief Marketing Officer at Marstudio. I've been to so many conferences and marketing and sales type seminars over the years. and you get fed maybe 60 minutes worth of information, and then you only have 5 minutes to ask questions, and you're left thirsty and hungry for more. Decided to really flip the script on its head. So instead of spending 60 minutes on the stage and then answering questions for 5 minutes, we're gonna spend 5 minutes on the stage and spend the 60 minutes answering questions. Because marketing, means a lot of different things to folks. I think the best way to look at marketing in its pure sense is communication, right? So, and now there's this amazing, complexity and gap and integration between sales and marketing. But anyways, we'll get back to that. So for Jeremy, I know we have like kind of three segments to our day. We're going to be here for the next 90 minutes. Um,
Mhm.
I was thinking we start out with just straight Q&A questions
Mhm.
that way we can get some momentum going,
Yep.
get everybody to ask their questions, and then maybe the second segment, if anybody's brave enough or bold enough or just wants to jump on as a panelist, we can do the second segment. We can allow for people to jump on and have a little bit more dynamic conversation, and then go back to just the straight Q&As on the question and answer. So that way I'll mix it up a little bit. Yeah, and we're gonna experiment with that and see how that works. Okay, real quick, a little bit about myself. Um, I want to be as short as possible because I want to be able to give you guys as much time as possible. So, there's really kind of like three pieces to my history. The first piece being that our family business growing up was in the liquidation business, retail liquidation business. And a big part of that is marketing, right? Understanding the business you're liquidating, understanding the geographical location, the demographics, how to market to the particular audiences within those locations. I remember my dad used to always say location, location, location. And we can get into that if somebody wants to follow up and ask a question about that, because that used to mean where your business was located. It used to mean, um, the demographic or household income. Today, location can mean very different things. And we're talking about a digital ecosystem. So, how does that translate, and how do you visualize that, and how do you take advantage of that? So, but moving from there, like every typical kid, I don't want to be anything like my dad, right? So I went into public service for many years. I really enjoyed serving my country. I was in NJRTC, Air Force RTC. I was a firefighter, EMT, police officer. Went to law school, became a public defender in Baltimore City. I was a cop in DC, working graveyard shift. Just really enjoyed that. I was young. I really enjoyed that giving and the reward that it gets. Had the blessing of meeting my business partner and who I call my best friend, and Sam Rohentan, who's one of the original founders of Marstudio. He's the S and the R in Mars. Um, and those are and Mars actually stands for a lot of different things. I don't want to again bore everybody with the details about Marstudio. My goal is to really get back to you guys and start letting you guys ask the questions. But he came to me and he's like, "Hey, Chevy, I know how amazing you are at sales. I have the marketing side." I'm like, "Man, I don't want to do business." And his response was, "Well, it's business, but you know what? We're gonna help people." And I was like, "How are we gonna do that?" And he's like, "Well, you understand a lot about business and marketing, so we can help people before they fail." Um, and it made sense. There was something that clicked there, and my wife was pregnant. I was a cop working graveyard, so some things just aligned, and it just made sense to take my life to another level. Here we are today. My last day job, I was the CEO of a multi-specialty medical practice. Grew that practice by 300% from every level, but definitely from the CMO level primarily. Um, and that has actually led to us having a pretty extensive portfolio in the medical health industry, in case there's anybody out there within that industry. Um, and the so we actually have a division called Medmar Solutions. You can actually go to it, Medmar, MEDMAR Solutions.com, which has our entire medical portfolio. But we have a GovMar division, which is government marketing. We do B2C, B2B. And now I'm kind of getting into. I'm probably stealing your thunder, Jeremy, because I was going to jump into telling them a little bit about Marstudio. Is that okay, or am I jumping the gun?
No, it's perfect. Go right ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, just getting into Marstudio. Marstudio's history, we're celebrating our 25th year anniversary. So that's a pretty cool milestone for us. Marstudio was originally founded at New Jersey Institute of Technology, like I said, by Sam Rontan and Adam Manrique, who Adam Manrique is the A and the M in Mars. It also stands for Marketing Studio. And this we really started with this idea of redefining marketing. We've always tried to be, cutting edge in terms of what we've been doing, really understand and grow marketing. And but the one thing that historically we did for the last 2 decades, which has really shifted, is that we were really a RFP slash proposal company. And over the decades, I realized there was a flaw in that. And the flaw is that the RFP is generally a self-diagnosis of the client's issues, and then the proposal is the script, right? So, what we were finding is oftentimes that the client was misdiagnosing their needs, and we were responding to these RFPs and then executing the RFPs, and then the client wasn't getting the results they were wanting to get to. Eventually, we got to a point where we started recognizing this pattern and would bring it to our client's attention ahead of time. And we were able to right the ship from the beginning and go down proper mediums or channels in order to get results, which led us to ultimately changing our entire engagement and business model. The model that we have now is what we refer to as an engagement and execution model. It really starts with a relationship, really starts with understanding the client's needs. We help them write their script through consultation and strategic sessions. We help them identify their scope of work, which we refer to as the third pillar, which leads to a really clearly defined level of effort and a prioritized level of effort. And then obviously that leads to management. Eventually, that we determine the execution and go from there. So I'll probably taken up more than 5 minutes of my stage time. I really want to just jump straight into those questions that people have. I implore everyone that's on the call, you can go ahead and start submitting those questions, and we'll get to it. And again, when we hit the second leg of our session, which we're doing every half an hour block, we'll see if there's anybody that wants to join us as a panelist and ask their questions live and have a little bit more of an interactive engagement where you can actually ask some follow-up. So if anybody wants to do that, definitely entertain that today.
Yep. All right, sounds good. So if you have a question, feel free to either raise your hand and we can be brought on as panelists, or you can just be asked, you just ask it anonymously as well.
Yeah, no problem in asking anonymous questions. If you're not comfortable, you're in a certain position in a certain company, but you need some guidance, I'm definitely here for you as well. Or, you might have any other interests. You want to, keep your privacy. You don't want to disclose who you are for the time being. That's perfectly fine. But on the other hand, if you do have questions and you want to give me some context in terms of your position or, what you do within the company, then I can, curtail my answers a little bit better for you so that you can get a little bit more value out of it. But the goal is really to get you guys engaged and asking questions.
Yep.
You didn't like my music, Jeremy? I was pumping my music, man.
Yeah, I was vibing. I was vibing. Looks like we have a question here. Hi Chevy, thanks for this valuable webinar. Curious, what types of sales collateral are effective in B2B? We use case studies, but we want to add more to the fray.
What a great question to lead with. And my mind is going in a direction that you're probably not even considering, because when I hear sales collateral, I don't just immediately think about tangible sales collateral. I start also thinking about digital sales collateral, and maybe people don't associate it that way, but we have something we refer to as our Marstudio signature process, and there's priorities. I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but I'll mention to you that the second priority of all the priorities is what we refer to as sales collateral, um, sales funnels and collateral, actually. And yeah, let's talk about the first part, case studies. So every business industry is going to have a little bit of their own particular nuances. So let's start there. I don't know if you're a B2G or a B2B, but for example, B2Gs have like case studies and past performance in terms of a document capabilities a document that they create. Uh, uh, so they're going to have certain documents that are nuanced to their particular industry. But at the end of the day, the purpose of sales collateral is to help convey the value proposition and the goals of that organization, right? So if you can, it's important to start with identifying who your target audience is. Where do they live? How are you going to engage them? And that'll help you initially determine the type of medium or channel. So, in terms of, actually, I should say the type of medium. So, is it better to create a digital medium? Are you meeting your clients on Zoom, or are you meeting your clients in person? Right? Are you gonna leave? Are you gonna have a leave behind to give them, or are you going to, forward something in an email? So the good thing is if you do this process in the right way, which is to identify your audience, understand their needs, and then create a message that resonates with them, then you'll be able to create specific collateral for their purposes, right? Um, I think it's always important in creating that message to create something that ultimately will be universally applied. Oftentimes, when people want to create collateral, they first start at the end of the spectrum, right? What collateral do we want? Are we going to send them postcards? Are we going to do a bifold? Are we going to, have a landing page, right? And then they go and create the content for that specific piece of collateral. I think that's duplicitous and not necessary, and also the wrong approach. You're approaching it from the solution again, as opposed to approaching it from the need. If you start with the need and the audience and you create a message, right, it's going to allow a clear message. Then it's going to allow you to translate that message across multiple collateral, across multiple assets. And then the assets simply become the medium or the mechanism or the channel to communicate that asset to your end audience. So I think, again, it comes down to the due diligence of understanding who your target audience is, how you intend to reach them, so that you can create the collateral. Are you going to be sending or attaching the collateral on LinkedIn, as opposed to are you sending it in an email? Are you going to have the collateral at the ready for when you are having a sales engagement and you're going to be sharing it on Zoom? Maybe a PowerPoint model is the best model. Um, but ultimately, I believe that sales collateral is literally a translation of the ownership or stakeholders' value proposition and why work with us to the end audience, right? So you're just simply trying to communicate without this. You're trying to communicate your value proposition without a 90-minute webinar. So it's really important to spend the time and energy to identify who it is and have the person that's in charge and knows that, right? Because the CEO, the owner, the GM can't be there, the CSO can't be there to share that value proposition firsthand, right? So I'll pause there, Jeremy, because I could probably just keep going on and on for the next 90 minutes about sales collaterals and funnels. But again, one other thing I'll say, since I mentioned sales funnels. Um, you have a corporate website, your company business visualization, and then you have landing pages that articulate your services and your value propositions. But I think it's also important to think about sales landing pages separately, sales funnels separately, because again, the specific purpose of those sales pages, those sales collateral, digital sales funnels are to, again, convey that value proposition and what are the next steps in terms of the engagement. At Marstudio, for example, you can go to mychiefmarketingofficer.com to see our sales funnel as opposed to our corporate site or our, MedMar site or things like that. All right, I'll pause there. Let's get to the next question. Or if there's a follow-up, I'll be happy to answer that.
Good. All right. So we answered that on sales collateral. Any next questions? We're excited to answer them. Okay, so Pamela says, I'm a marketing manager, and I was wondering if you could explain brand consistency. How does Marcio do that for its clients?
Okay. Yeah. Man, that's so important. Um, Mentioned that Marstudio signature process at the core. If you think of these priorities as satellites that are floating around this core, at the core is your planet. Pun intended with the whole Mars Studio and Planet thing. At the core is what we refer to as your almighty brand. This is a concept that our founder created with the almighty brand. And the purpose is that the brand should reflect the people living on that brand, the people you're serving on that planet. And that's again comes back to your core audience, right? Understanding who they are and where they live. Understanding their needs and creating messages that clearly resonate your value proposition, your service, starting from the brand, starting from the icon, starting from the tagline, starting from that. And then you have to transcend that into your first priority, your business visualization. What is business visualization? Business visualization is basically everything I have that makes me a business. So historically, it used to be your storefront and your sign and whatever was in your window. And when you walked into the store, the experience you felt. I'm sure you guys experienced that with, let's say, a Walmart or an Apple store, a McDonald's. When you walk into these places, they all have like kind of a brand presence. So but in the 21st century, oftentimes with businesses, that brand presence is translated into a digital storefront. So your website is really your digital storefront in this vast digital universe, right? So starting from your business visualization are all the things I need to be in business. If you're a restaurant, maybe a menu. If you're a doctor's office, you know that sales collateral brochure or pamphlet we were just talking about. Um, and it is extremely important to make sure there's brand integration throughout the sales and marketing process. Um, the reason being, you don't want to disconnect your touches. We understand that it takes 8 to 12 touches in order to have a 50% conversion rate. So if the individual has a clear understanding of your value proposition and there's some consistency in the brand language, you're essentially creating a pathway and you're creating these touches that will maximize the opportunity for conversion. And it's important that when you're going through this process, when the user is going through this process, that they realize that it's the same organization making those touches and also the consistency in the value proposition. We may have three different target audiences that we're serving with, and more often than not, there's more than that in terms of the services a company will offer, right? You're going to have a user experience on the website. You're going to have marketing engines that are generating leads with advertising or funnels that are going to bring them into that experience, and then they're going to drill down. But the person may also choose to bounce around. Ultimately, regardless of how they're entering and where they're going and the journey they're going through and the engagement process and how that all happens, all of that needs to be consistently the same language because what are we trying to do? We're trying to acclimate our clients to what services we have and the process that we have. And the sooner you start that journey and the sooner you're able to articulate that value proposition and the more consistent you are throughout the business visualization and then the sales funnels and collateral and then the lead generation engines and the follow-up retargeting remarketing, right, and the promotional emails and so forth and so on and in your advertising, the easier it's going to be to basically convey that message and the clarity in your thoughts and what it is that you have to offer, making it easier for the person to make a decision to move forward with you.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so
All right.
it's very important, very important. Again, at the center is the almighty brand and those satellites, those priorities. There's 9 priorities, 9 satellites. Well, 8 satellites, and then a kind of like a new sphere around it. But I might actually pull that up visually and share it if we have time later.
Yeah. All right. So that answers Pamela's question. And then we have a question from Scott Davis. Hello, this is Scott Davis, and my question is, how do you reduce customer churn and increase lifetime value? I'm the CFO of a consulting company, and I noticed that our customer retention isn't as good as we'd like.
Um, It's a question that's near and dear to my heart. And the best recommendation I can give you, and you always want a CMO that will, point you in the right direction, right? If I'm not a subject matter on something, I will bring in the subject matter on something, right? You gotta be humble enough to know when you don't know, and also to point people in the right direction. But I do know this answer very well. But what I will share with you is there's a book that I have in my hand right now called Never Lose a Customer Again. And I think it's an amazing book. And it's not just a straight read. I mean, there's no pictures, but there's definitely some breakdowns and some bullet points and some notes in it. The book is written by Joey Coleman. Turn any sale into a lifelong loyalty in 100 days. And this is awesome that we're talking about this because, by the way, here's the book. Okay. So it's awesome that we're talking about this because Jeremy, the last question you just asked about like how important is, brand
Or
continuum,
consistency.
right? Uh, it's really in this book. The sales process used to be like this 8-step process, and it all happened before the engagement. There was no consideration of what should happen post engagement. you know we take for granted that we've gotten a client, right? And we forget. And I think there's this old adage, I don't like it too much, but there's this old adage, always be selling, and that everybody's a big part of that process. See, most companies think it's only the salesperson that's selling, right? But everyone within the company is selling the value proposition of the company. So in Joey Coleman's book, the sales process from the time that they start to then signing is 2 steps. It's just the first 2 steps. So if you change your thinking and your approach, and the approach is that now there's 6 steps beyond the engagement, that will help you. Retain those clients. Let me see if I can just find the quick bullets here. Yeah, let me talk about the phases real quick. Phase one is assess. That's when you're understanding what the client needs, and they admit. Basically, they signed a contract. You assess them, they assessed you, and then they admitted to needing your services to sign the contract. Now this is the important part. The next 6 steps. Phase three is affirm. The affirm phase is more commonly known as buyer's remorse. So it's really important that once they engage you, that you reassure them that you understand their problem and that you're going to get that solution done. Activate. The activate phase begins with the first major post-sale interaction, right? You're moving forward, they're building confidence that, they know you know what you're doing and that you're going to accomplish that. Phase five, which is basically the third step post engagement, is acclimate. The acclimation step is really important because you want them to buy in and understand your approach. So I've already mentioned with Marstudio, we have pillars in terms of our engagement. We have actually pillars and silos when it comes to our engagement and execution. And then we have a Marstudio signature process that helps you understand the priorities of what you should be focused on, right? So we're helping them. We know this. My team knows this, but does the client know it? Does the client understand, the process, and are they acclimated to your process? And I love the little icon in this book reference to that. It's 2 mountains and a sun. It reminds me of like, Mount Everest climbers. You got to acclimate to your ecosystem if you want to survive, right? You got to get your clients to do that. Number six, which is the fourth step after sale, accomplish. You did what you said you were going to do. And you have to remind them of that. You have to tell them, hey, we got that job done that you came to us for, right? So we affirmed it, we activated, we acclimated them, but we accomplished it, right? And when you accomplish that goal and you make them aware of that's happening, they adopt you, right? They love you, they appreciate you. And then when they adopt you, they don't leave. But there's one thing that can happen beyond that when you do a really good job and they've now adopted you, right? I don't think this is always the case, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the last phase is advocate. When they love you and they adopt you, they start telling everybody else about you. So this is the part of the book I'm not always too sure about because I think that humans are sometimes a little selfish. And when they find something that they love, they don't want to share it all the time. They want to keep it their own best kept secret. But I guess it depends on whether that engagement is going to affect their business or not, or their life or not. But anyways, I think most people will definitely share, share the good news that they've experienced. Hope that
Sounds
helps
good.
you. And I'm happy to
Yes,
answer
Scott.
any additional questions.
Yeah. Well, that was valuable, Scott. I think it's a good time for us to revisit our, just really quick, our rules of engagement for this webinar. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. All right. So as always, yes, it's built for, founders, business owners, CEOs, executives, but this webinar is also great for those not in those positions, marketing managers, entry level professionals as well, looking to learn more nuanced details around marketing and approaches um, and such. As always, if you want to come on as a panelist, make sure to raise your hand. We'll bring you on as a panelist. If you want to if you want to ask questions anonymously, that works as well. Um, Go ahead, definitely introduce yourself, your name, your position. That gives us good context, also your industry. That really helps with how Chevy answers questions based on the industry. Keep it to 30 seconds or less. Again, just to allow others to have enough time to ask their questions. Follow-up questions, if you need clarification on questions that on answers that Chevy gives, feel free to ask a follow-up question. And please refrain from interrupting or adding your own comments when questions are asked. That way, Chevy can go ahead and answer them himself. We try to keep a distraction-free environment. Please remain muted if not engaged in a conversation. If you need help with it, again, my co-host Kevin or I can help you with that. And please refrain from self-promotion as well. Also, if you're not registered, please make sure you are registered. In order to join this webinar, you can do so using this QR code. Seems like everyone on this call is registered though, so um, that's taken care of. And really quick, if you do want to speak with Chevy one-on-one, he does offer a free one-to-one business growth session. Again, we have some criterias here, but again, it's not required, right? Um, he does speak to established business owners, people with an existing brand presence and a website, 5 million plus in revenue, existing marketing budget. But at the same time, he's met with, again, entry level, marketing professionals that need, a strategic approach to the avalanche of work they're given. And also, people that are part of nonprofits where they're more smaller in scale as well. So these one-on-one sessions are pretty versatile in terms of who who speaks with Chevy and who he helps out. So that's our kind of 30-minute um going over of the rules and also mentioning the one-on-one. Let's get back into the questions and answers. So we have another question here. Hi, it's anonymous. Hi, I play a marketing role at a dental software company. I was wondering, how can we establish a monthly marketing budget and how should it be allocated across campaigns?
Okay. So I get this question asked all the time, and I'll give you my first gut answer to that question, and then I'll give you the academia answer. um, my gut answer to people asking me this question, and one of the ways we're able to have success with the clients that we work with, is that I always say, they ask me, I get asked all the time, Chevy, what's the right budget that I need? And my answer is a sustainable one. And that's really important to understand. A sustainable budget is the best budget when it comes to marketing because marketing, again, in its purest form is communication and it's an ongoing, living, breathing thing. If you've built the website and just launched it and never touched it again, you're not leveraging the opportunities that that site has to offer you and your audience. Um, so it's important to have access to the continuing conversation. Companies that have a marketing budget are 47 more likely to be innovators of their industry. Why? Because even if you're sitting down with a group of people once a month, once every 2 months, um, and you're asking yourself, what can we do better? Then you're going to get better. You're going to constantly be differentiating yourself against your competition. The goal isn't to mirror or copy your competitors, especially the ones that are ahead of you. The goal is to elevate yourself above their presence and their brand and their messaging and make sure that the differentiations between you and them are clear. Um, the academic answer is that you sh- you should have 2.5% to 10% of your gross revenue going into marketing. But what does that marketing and sales? What does that really entail, though? I mean, do you include in the sales guy's salary into that budget, or or is it just your ad buy budget and your service costs for your marketing team? I think it's a combination of all of those. At the end of the day, you want to be able to measure the results that you're getting from the spend, and that leads us to understanding our client acquisition cost. This is a very simple thing to identify with the right leadership, right? This is something I do for our clients. I help them determine their client acquisition cost. And then there's formulas to use when it comes to your profit and a percentage of your profit from each transaction or annual value of your clients or lifetime value of your clients in order to then calculate the client acquisition cost. And understanding client acquisition costs can be very powerful because then you have the confidence in making the spend to acquire that client, right? And what you're hopefully able to do through the appropriate team leadership is A/B study different campaigns, different channels, different mediums, different types of engagement, different type of lead gen systems to measure that client acquisition cost and make investments in areas that you're getting the results, and then you should be able to make X investment to get X result. So that makes it a lot easier to then determine the appropriate marketing budget in order to move forward. But again, I implore people to start somewhere. I think, and create an engagement with a company that was willing to nurture them and grow with them and build with them in terms of that budget. But again, it doesn't matter if your budget's $1,000 a month or $100,000 a month. Um, I think what's important is that there be a clear process and a clear, goals related to that spend and what you're trying to achieve with that spend. But again, it comes down to sustainability and growth.
Okay.
And again, for anybody that's asked questions, if I didn't dig deep enough, because I'm trying to balance between just giving you some information but every one of these questions, I could probably spend an hour digging into all the pieces. And Jeremy, like when we talk about like marketing budget, right, or we talk about these other questions that have come up, their marketing and sales is just so integrated at this point, right? Our company mascot is a two-headed kraken. Really quick to plug that in. It's a giant mythical octopus with two heads, right? And 16 tentacles. Why? Because, back in the day when you used to do marketing, billboards, sign walkers, third page of the Washington Post, there was only so many tentacles that you had to kind of, reach out with. And maybe marketing was a little bit more one-dimensional. But now there you have digital and SEO and web, and now we have AI. So this thing is growing a whole new leg, right? But you have 16 tentacles. And why two heads? Because one head is your marketing subject matter's head, your CMO, your marketing team, your marketing agency, your marketing firm, right? The other head is yours. You understand your client target demographics better than anyone. You're the one that's living, breathing with them and working with them daily. Your sales folks are the ones engaging. Your staff is the one engaging them every day. And it's important that there be this connectivity in terms of understanding who you're serving and then making sure that these 16 tentacles are being appropriately leveraged. And you're not going to use all 16 at once. That's not how I guess octopuses move that way sometimes, but you get the idea. Maybe you will use them all at once. And when I think about it a little bit further, but the point is they still have to work in harmony with each other. They still have to, have certain, balances and certain, movement in terms of being able to have those appropriate touches in terms of different mediums and different pieces. So I think the budget needs to address the whole picture. I think the brand needs to address the whole picture. There needs to be this continuum of branding, this budget analysis, and this marketing and sales integration that needs to happen. And when you focus on just one piece of marketing today, it's so, if you don't think about it clearly, it literally touches everything else, and you don't even realize sometimes how it's touching everything else and the impact it's going to have on everything else. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that analogy about the two-headed kraken, because your marketing service provider or partner should definitely be very closely knit to your company and understand things, but at the same time, it's you that has the most context behind your customer. So I always like that mascot. Scott commented, "Thank you for that. It was very helpful. We'll definitely look into that book." So it looks like he's referring to the book you mentioned, um, related to customer retention. Okay.
Cool.
Thank
And
you,
Scott, if
Scott.
you want to have a conversation about it, definitely sign up on that link that we have for the one-on-one. And I'd be even more happy, happy to chat with you even further about it and see how it would apply to you and dig into it a little bit further.
Yep. And then we have another question. How do you hire and manage relationships with external marketing agencies? Perfect timing. We've hired a few in the past, but they didn't work out well.
Yeah. That's a tough one, right? And this is where we come back to self-diagnosis and RFPs. Um, This is why in the medical industry, they require you to go see your primary doctor first before you go see a specialist, right? You don't go and start see the specialist first. Because sometimes you may again misdiagnose. You're like, oh, you get the analogy. Um, so I think what happens is there isn't always a clear understanding of the sophisticated nature of marketing and sales integration and all the different pieces in today's world. You could have gotten away with this 10, 15, 20 years ago going with one company, because there was only so much in terms of that bandwidth. But now it's just the world's getting constantly more complex, and there's so many more moving pieces, and that's literally what's happening. You having companies that engage one organization for their logo, then they engage the next organization for their website, then they engage the next organization for direct mail, and then they engage the next company for their advertising, and then they bring in a young social media manager, and then the CMO, excuse me, the CEO or the owner or the manager or whoever is now having to answer questions to all these people, and there's no cohesiveness. There's no, it's fractured. Um, so I think what ends up happening is we may um, look to, oh, I need a website, so I'll hire a web company. And then there's an expectation that they'll do your advertising for you, or they'll do their SEO for you, or they'll do X or Y or Z. And just in hiring a web design and dev company, are they an e-commerce company, right? Are they a dev company? Are they more focused on the user experience and web design as opposed to web development? So there's different type of web companies that you can hire. Sometimes people will focus on SEO and just hire an SEO company to maybe build their website, and then there isn't the subject matter expertise. So I like to, I think that it's important to understand who you're hiring, and but that's the problem though. If you're putting the solution ahead of the consultation and understanding of your needs, that's where you oftentimes you're engaging companies that don't end up don't not working out for you. And that's why we've made a bold effort to say, you know what, we appreciate the fact that you want a logo. Let's schedule a consultation and let me understand why you think you want a logo and what do you think it's going to do for you. You might be absolutely on point and right about what your needs. Great. You got a validation from the subject matter expert. There's plenty of times we go to our doctor and we're like, hey man, I think I broke my arm, and she'll send you to the orthopedic, right? Um, So sometimes the assessment is clear and it's easy, but it's always good to have that professional look. And sometimes the diagnosis isn't easy, and you have to beta and you have to test things. Oh, I think my back hurts, so and you're like you get a steroid shot in your back, but they isolate it and you still your back still hurts, and they realize it's a pinched nerve in your leg, hip flexor or whatever, and it has nothing to do with your back. So so it's important to really dig deeper and understand what's going on, what the goals are. Whether I need a new website. Why? What are you trying to achieve? Credibility, leads. Are you trying to have more conversions? What is it? Are you B2G? Is it just about showing your capabilities and your professionalism? Again, because you're not going to be using your website and B2G for lead gen. You know what I mean? I mean, it is, but it's more of a conversion process rather than a SEO pay per click process. You're not going to have government contractors. That's not the method of engagement. So again, understanding your industry and understanding who you are will help with that.
Said, well said. So that, but we have another question here from Amy. She says, I'm looking to start a supplement company in the weight loss sector. What marketing strategies do you recommend for bootstrapped early stage businesses and companies?
Yeah. I have to admit, product marketing of any kind, apparel marketing, is one of the most challenging areas to just penetrate, right, as a whole. I think before you get into marketing of your business, you have to really focus on marketing your concept and your idea and testing the validity of your business. Who are you serving? What are your expected revenue sources? Who are your target markets? How are you going to build the company? What are the costs associated with that? And we've done this for some other folks where we do what we refer to as kind of like a VC pitch deck. Helping the organizations raise capital. So I'm not sure if I'm going down the right path, but um, because here, remember when I mentioned budgets, Jeremy, and I was mentioning, sustainable budgets. Well, a sustainable budget has to come from an existing cash flow. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. So when you're startup, um, when you're startup, you don't have that cash flow. So now you're using seed capital. So the question is, are you using your own money? Are you using someone else's money? Where are you in your startup journey? Have you ever run a business before? Have you been in a leadership role before? Is this your second business you're starting up? Because it's really going to change your level of engagement and understanding. And I think that's where it's really important to. I would highly recommend engaging a CMO, and having that and I wouldn't engage them for the long run. I would engage them for preliminary engagement to have certain conversations to make sure you're crystal clear about what it's going to entail. I would engage a fractional business development person. I would, if this is your first time, right? Because they can point out to you. And this is funny because Jeremy, more often than not, when people are, by the way, who was the person that asked the question? Was it anonymous?
Oh, it was Amy.
Amy. So
Yeah.
Amy, um, it's oh, I lost my train of thought. Um, startup. Um,
Yeah, in the weight loss sector, supplement company. She's looking to start.
yeah, I had a particular thought in mind, but I'll come back to me. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, the reason that the consultation, I was trying to say get some initial guidance. The reason the initial guidance would be important is so that you can kind of create a roadmap and understand where you are and what resources you're going to need. Uh, if somebody came to me with these specific queries, I would say, hey, let's do a 30 to 45-day engagement and let me help you evaluate the idea. That's what I was gonna. It came back to me, Jeremy and Amy. The thing that I want to share is most people, and I think we're all going to relate to this. When we want to start a company, what's the first thing we'll do? We'll either form an LLC or hire someone to form an LLC or an S corp or a C corp or whatever corporation, a partnership, or that sole proprietorship. That's the first thing we'll do, right? And then the next thing we'll do is we get our EIN, we'll go to the bank and open a bank account for money we don't have. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll hire an accountant to count the money we don't have. Right? And 10 years later, after we hired some guy to make our logo, some guy to build our website, some guy to do our advertising, and we realized that we're in over our heads, 10 years later, we come to the realization that we could have probably done this a little bit better, and we should have hired someone that's a subject matter expert in sales or marketing. So I think, revenue is the first thing that a client should be considering and thinking about. Is my business model viable and what do I need to spend to get it to that point? Are you selling a product? Are you selling a service? Are you selling an application? Are you selling a technology, right? So those things are important, and the cost and overhead to run those things. Did you buy a franchise? There's so many different considerations there, right? So I think it's really important to talk to CSOs, CMOs, and there's plenty of people. Join a chamber. If this is your first time, join a chamber. That it will only cost you like $900 for the year. And then when you go to that chamber and you meet business leaders, say, "Hey, how you doing? I'd love to talk to you about your business and how you got started. Would you like to?" And people love talking about themselves. They love talking about themselves, right? So can I get coffee with you? Can I take you to lunch? It'll cost you $30 lunch, but inflation, a burger costs $30, so you might have to spend 60, but it's still cheaper than hiring someone to build your website for 20, 10, $1,500. Whatever you're spending, it's still cheaper. And so I hope that helps. Yeah. Start
And
small, take
then
your time, wade into the pool if it's your first time. If it's not your first time and you understand everything we're saying, then engage the right agency or firm to dive into the deep end and talk about your seed capital. And if you want to get investors involved, you get investors involved. If you don't, then you're going to self-fund it and you're ready to go. Let's jump in the deep end. I don't want to assume, and sorry, I'm assuming.
yeah. And Amy, feel free to add any more context that you think would be important for Chevy to know, um, or if you have a follow-up question. Uh, Another question from anonymous. Looks like this is a follow-up question. Um, I have a follow-up question regarding the marketing budget question I asked for our dental software company. Do you recommend hiring a consultant first to help us find out what our needs are so that we can figure out what the best marketing budget should be for the results we're looking for?
Absolutely, 100%. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. Yes, and I'll preface, I'll mention this. There are a lot of consultants out there who just consult, like professors do in academia, and then when you get into the real world and you try to apply it, you're like, why isn't this matching up? I highly recommend that you understand the background of your consultant and make sure they have experience and executing what they're consulting you on, right? This is really important. There are a lot of really amazing, good consultants out there. And I don't mean to frown upon the ones that are in the CMO space that have worked for Marriott for the last 15 years as their CMO, and now they're consulting businesses on what to do. If your business is the size of Marriott, hiring that CMO, and especially if your business is in the hospitality space, hiring that CMO may make a lot of sense. But most people don't have businesses the size of Marriott, right? So, and it's important to work with a CMO who's worked with businesses of your type. I don't like the idea of working with exclusive based agencies, which what that means is all they do is legal or all they do is e-commerce. And the reason I don't like that is because they tend to lack diversity and ideas and concepts. When you're working in multiple industries as a CMO, you can steal ideas from different industries and apply them to new industries and try to reinvent, not reinvent them, but retool them and see if they'll work within those industries. You can take mom and pop ideas down to, up to Fortune 100 companies, and Fortune 100 ideas down to mom and pops, right? So you're doing this kind of like cross pollination of ideas and concepts. Um, and I think I might have gone a little bit off track. If you want to rephrase the question, yeah. So I
Yeah, I
think the question
think
was,
so.
do you hire someone to, help you figure out the budget? Yes, because the reason the answer is yes is because the budget and the dollars that are being spent, you want to know what you're going to spend them on. So I always say not what we're going to do, but why we're going to do it. And I think that's really important. Um, why you're doing something as opposed to what you're doing. What are you expecting to get as a result of what you're doing? Because oftentimes we fall into the kind of like the hamster wheel, and next thing you know, we're just doing, and we're not even asking ourselves why we're doing it, and we're going in circles, and we're not getting any results.
Mhm. Got it.
And
And
feel free to ask another follow up if you want, and I can dig into that a little further. I'm happy to, have at least a couple string of questions where we get a little deeper and deeper into it.
yeah,
And of course, if
and another.
anybody wants to join as a panelist and actually have a dialogue back and forth, this is a great opportunity during this segment, and we can even go. I know the segment's almost over, and I just mentioned it, but we can even do that going into the third segment. If anybody wants to be a panelist, just raise your hand or mention that, and we can join.
Sounds good. And then we have a question from Pankaj. He says, "Thank you for this webinar. It's very informative. My question is, how can we measure and analyze marketing ROI across marketing channels that do not provide some sort of analytics platform?"
I think there's always a way. I think there's always a way. Um, the question is how. And if I had more specifics of their business and their channels, then for example, you could. That's why radio stations say mention Mike Lindell, whatever. I just came up with a name. I don't even know who Mike Lindell is. But anyways, the whole idea is mention go for whatever. And they say or also in terms of your intake, having your intake staff document, or have a list of channels and mediums that you're using and saying, hey, how did you hear about us? So I think there's a way to measure. And now there's kind of very unique tools. For example, I'll share one very more modern concept with you guys that takes a traditional concept, an offline concept, and turns it into an online concept. And for example, there you can send out postcards, and the postcard has a code on it that has an offer. And when the person goes online and enters that code, that postcard is associated with that code, and now you have tracking on what was traditionally a hard asset that wasn't trackable. More often than not, the only way you could track, direct mail or some sort of, hard asset is when that person brought that offer to you. But in this case, they might not even bring it to you, but you would be able to see if they even opened it or engaged the offer. They don't even need to come to you. As long as they go online and engage the offer, you could get data and analytics back. So, we were talking about priorities. Marstudio signature process. At the core is Almighty brand. Then you have priority one, two, three, four. Priority number four is data and analytics. It's a very important priority, and then that closes the loop between the four satellites because you use data and analytics to improve your P1, 2, 3. But it's important to track the data. It's important to to do what I would call the word I'm looking for. It's not coming to me, but it's when you try to correlate the data with the marketing medium. So yeah, anyways, it'll come to me at some point, and I'll throw it out there when it does. But yeah, it's really important to do that, and there's ways that you can do that, and in order to track it, so that you
Mhm.
can see that and those client acquisition costs and be able to measure the results.
Yeah, I think starting a business up first makes a lot of sense. So, Pankaj, thank you for the question. Next question. This one's from Anonymous. Hi, I'm an operations manager for a medium-sized software company. How do you make sure marketing project management runs smoothly? I've noticed we tend to fall behind on deadlines, especially when we have more initiatives to work on. So I guess more um, busier kind of time frames.
Yeah. And we experienced this. We have experienced this, I should say. And it's really important to have managers. And this is kind of like, again, when people go directly to the solution or the deliverable, they don't they don't necessarily understand the value of the managers doing the work, right? Or the executives responsible for managing the work. I always say delegate, follow up, follow through, right? But then in order to delegate, you need to have someone that's responsible for that delegation and then line itemizing that delegated work and then following up on that delegating work and making sure that we follow through on executing it. And we call them project managers, right? They play a vital role in marketing, and oftentimes it's an afterthought. And that's where we find most of the fractured problems in terms of where businesses are in their growth. They hired again the graphic design company, they hired the website design company, they hired the SEO company, they hired the direct mail company, they hired the social media company, but there's no one in the middle. There's no one managing all of this. And some companies, they have all the capabilities, but more often than not, because of the RFP process, that's a historical process. Um, they're they're what I would refer to as client-led initiatives. I don't think we do that in any other kind of like critical business. I don't think clients lead their financial decisions always. I mean, they do to a degree, right? I don't think they lead their legal decisions. I don't think they lead their medical decisions. They usually will find the subject matter expert to lead them and to manage them and to take care of that because if you're not unless you're a mechanic and good with cars, you're probably not doing the mechanical work on your car and you're not managing the work that needs to happen to your car. You're taking it to a shop, to a subject matter expert, and you're handing that management and that process off to them. But again, the management part is generally the oversight, the consultation, the strategy, the scope of work, and the level of effort prioritization. Those things are often an afterthought, and that leads to a lack of robust deliverables that are have value, if that makes sense.
Good. And I think this is a good time for, people that may be just joining in to kind of revisit our um, rules of engagement for this webinar. So, how we typically do things. If you want to come on as a panelist, feel free to raise your hand and we'll go ahead and add you as a panelist and you'll be on video and you can ask your question that way. Or of course, you can ask anonymously or in the comments in the question and answers chat. Um, Always good to introduce your name, right? Your position, your company name, and the industry helps with us understanding it helps with Chevy to understand the best approach, the best way to answer your question based off your position, company, and industry. Keep it to 30 seconds or less in terms of read time or in terms of just saying it if you come on as a panelist. And feel free to ask follow-up questions. I know we've had some of you ask great follow-up questions. We always welcome that. Please refrain from interrupting or adding your own comments when questions are asked. Or Chevy will, provide the answers. To maintain distraction-free webinar for everyone, please remain muted. And if you find difficulty with that, myself or Kevin can help you. Please refrain from self-promotion. We may remove an attendee from webinar if they engage in promoting themselves excessively. Again, just to keep this as valuable as possible for everyone. And if you're not registered, make sure you're registered. There's this QR code we have here. You can scan it, to ensure that you're registered and register for our future monthly webinars as well. And Chevy offers one-on-one business growth strategy session for everyone on the call. So if this is something you feel like would really help you in terms of, you know, getting even more into detail about specific questions you have, or maybe outlining some sort of marketing strategy for you, he's more than happy to do that. He meets with, high level executives, but also, entry level, middle manager, individuals that need some sort of guidance in their marketing process as well. All right. So to continue on with our, third leg of this webinar, let's have a look at what questions we have here. So Jacob asked, "Hi Chevy, I'm a freelance media buyer. I mainly focus on Facebook ads. How do you approach A/B testing and optimizing your marketing campaigns?"
So, okay, okay. This is a good opportunity for me to kind of hit on another suggestion I raised a little earlier, which was I started with the whole location, location, location. And I think in terms of A/B testing, I think first and foremost, it's important to again understand your audience and where they live so that you can advertise to them or promote to them within those ecosystems. I think I look at Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter as not just social media, but I look at them as Facebook Boulevard, LinkedIn Avenue, Twitter Circle, or we should say X, Square instead of Twitter Circle, since Twitter is now X. But the reason I say that is because we used to be focused on geographic locations and having our storefronts and marketing our business. It was really important to be a business in New York City. It was really important to be a business in DC or in LA, in these city hubs because it somehow portrayed a certain credibility in terms of your business and your positioning. Um, but people aren't engaging storefronts the way they used to, and business has become a lot more fluid in terms of its reach. Um, but it's still important to have that street presence. So A/B testing, whether you're doing it in the same ecosystem on the same boulevard, or you're doing it on different streets or different social media channels, I think is an important step. And I think that's part of the journey of you leveraging mediums and channels in order to reach that target audience. So once you know your target audience, you make some educated hypothesis about where they reside and what they want to receive. And you try to communicate that value proposition maybe one or two ways. And you then, uh, deploy them and you measure them. It's important to keep or calculate, as factors like you want to keep the budget the same, right? So that the one doesn't, isn't outweighed by the other simply because of because you want to keep your data similar. Um, so let's say, for example, you're just staying on Facebook, you may want to have two different types of ads. One would be more of, let's say it has a person on it and it's more personable. The other one is more abstract. One has a more cerebral message, something really catchy, and the other one is more focused on your deliverables. And then you can see and measure which one is attracting the right audience for you. Um, if you're going to use two different channels, right? Let's say LinkedIn and Facebook, then you want to run the same exact ad, right? Why? Because then you can measure and compare them. So there's a lot of different factors that can go into A/B studies. But I think, and that's the other thing. I think oftentimes people think of A/B as just like a one and done thing. I think I don't, at Marstudio, I don't it's just a part of the natural process where we've forgotten we're doing ABs, right? Because you're constantly, creating a new ad, a new message, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to improve that value proposition. You're trying to improve the visuals. You're trying to improve the engagement. You're trying to improve the clarity. But when you do that, you're going to launch a new campaign without taking down the old campaign. And then you're going to compare to see how the new campaign does against the old campaign, right? And I would never put all my eggs in one basket. I would probably have an A, B, C, and my C is always my new campaign. And if the C performs better than A and B, then I might remove B and introduce C. But again, it really depends. And that's in the event that I have a fixed budget and I'm all within the same channel, Facebook. But if I have a more diverse budget and I'm in multiple channels, I may keep those different channels open. Why? Because tomorrow Facebook might change their algorithm and all of a sudden all my sales get lost through Facebook. I know that we hit on a lot of different moving pieces when it came to AB and went a little bit outside of it. And then there's also tools. There's a lot of tools that you can use to do focus groups and do AB studies that way, where you can actually engage live audiences. But it really depends. And it depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
That one definitely would take a little bit more conversation. And, and I want to mention this when we talk about consultation. Most people have this idea that it's just, Chevy sitting there and talking to them. Consultation requires a two-way dialogue. And
Mhm.
under our first pillar, which is consultation, we actually have an icon, which is two people, and the arrow that goes between them is actually pointing at both people. At Marstudio, one of the first things we do in our engagements is schedule after the kickoff meeting what we refer to as listening sessions, because I need to hear from that other Kraken head, right? I need to hear everything. Their heads aren't connected, the body's connected, right? So I need to hear everything that other head has to share with me, everything that it knows, because that way I can get a better understanding, or your team can get a better understanding and a better clarity. And remember, it's not about either one of those heads. It's not about what I want. It's not about what you want. It's about what our clients want. It's about who we're serving. That two-headed kraken is serving your clients, and it's about what they want. So it's funny. You can almost imagine a two-headed kraken working at SpaceX versus a two-headed kraken. Go ahead and visualize that for a minute, building rockets in your head, right? Now imagine that same two-headed kraken at Panera Bread, right? So now you just visualize that. You guys are gonna have all these crazy dreams tonight. But
Yeah, that's exactly what I just thought of.
right? So you can imagine how it would be working differently and building differently and creating differently. And on the other side of the counter is the audience that it's serving. So again, it's important to understand that.
Great. Our next question is from Charles. Hey, Chevy, this is Charles. We are a business to business company and are very interested in AI technology and how to incorporate it into our marketing operations. How do you build a successful AI tech stack to help automate or enhance our marketing, sales, or even our internal project management?
Loaded. This is like
Yeah.
I need can I tag team Elon on this one? um, awesome question. Not one I'm used to getting. Um, so I will share with you guys that I recently finished an executive program at MIT on AI and integration business strategy. And there is a world out there of opportunity and integration. As a matter of fact, how we visualize it with our Marstudio signature process, um, which is that we have at the center Almighty Brand. Then you have four satellites, which are business visualization, sales collateral and funnels, lead generation, data analytics. And then you have another four satellites that are going around in kind of a different loop, but also integrated in this process. I won't bore you with 6, 7, 8, nine. It's 5, 6, 7, and 8, but I'll share with you it's content management systems and CRMs and the technology that supports this outside shell, these outside satellites, the first four satellites. But after finishing that program, I came back and I took our ecosystem and I created a sphere around it, a bubble around it, kind of like an ozone layer around all the satellites in the planet. And that was priority number 9, and that was AI. AI can literally touch every element within that container, from your brand to your business visualization to your sales collateral funnels, lead gen, data analytics. And when we're talking about an AI tech stack, um, there's definite, I don't know. If anybody knows this, please share it with me. I'd love to hear from you. There's not a company out there that does a tech stack like there are companies out there that do ad stacks. So there are companies out there that have like an advertising stack where you can go ahead and use a budget and maybe like three or one one to three ad groups, and their technology using algorithms and AI and whatever else will deploy these across multiple mediums and channels and measure them and constantly move them around and improve the ranking and blah blah blah, like an ad stack would, where they're actually plugged into multiple big hitter media outlets, right? Like an ad stack is definitely something that's come to fruition, but I don't know of a AI stack that can potentially hit on all the different areas of your business, from your CRM to your CMS to your creative to your videography to your graphic design to your your client nurturing, email automation. I don't know of one that has it all, but I don't think that was what you were asking. I just want to mention that. I think you're asking, hey, which AI stack should I purchase to create my own stack? And again, it's going to be particular to your needs. Where are your pain points? Where could you create improvement in your process? Are you suffering with lead gen, or are you suffering with conversion? So you're going to want to use two different AI technologies if you're looking at, let's say, lead gen needs versus an AI technology for nurturing and conversion, or communication, or versus using an AI solution to create copy for you or to create a graphic for you. And even if there are these technologies that you can use, you still need the subject matter expertise of the individual that, used to create these assets by hand, because they have the understanding of how to leverage that asset. All you're really doing is being more efficient with your time and energy. So I don't think AI has gotten to the place where we have a overarching AI that you can plug in, and it can come and evaluate where your needs are and then handle it all for you, without you touching it. The human intelligence um, is absolutely necessary in helping you identify where those gaps are. And then what you're doing is you're leveraging AI for what I would refer to as collective intelligence to then deploy what you've always deployed, but doing it at in a more efficient way, in a faster way. Um, but there's always going to be that, and that's one of the biggest challenges, Jeremy. And I don't know who asked the question. Was it anonymous or
It's Charles.
Charles?
Yeah.
Charles, I think one of the biggest challenges for businesses is finding someone that understands all of this from a marketing perspective and a sales integration perspective, and then on top of it from an AI perspective, in and understands the capability and potential of AI in conjunction with the marketing and sales integration, and then being able to figure out where to blend that in, right? So I think that's your number one challenge, and finding someone. I'm not going to pat myself on the back, but yeah, that's what I do. I enjoy doing that. That's actually something I've been very excited about, and integrating AI into a lot of these into these concepts. But again, you need to understand how when you make a change here, it affects it globally across your ecosystem. So that is even more pronounced when you start implementing AI into certain components of your business, and it requires the support of many other stakeholders. So you can have an AI solution that, let's say, has manages your emails or your automation and communication, but there's going to be collateral and content and messaging that's going to be needs to be supported by other team members, and making sure that it's all integrated into one is really the challenge. But again, finding someone that understands that and can manage that is really the key to success.
Yeah. All right. And then there's a question here. Can you talk about the differences between branding and marketing? As a marketing manager, I sometimes have trouble explaining this to our leadership because they don't see the distinctions.
I'm probably in the group that doesn't see the distinction. No. And I think, they're just so reliant on each other. And I think that's why we tend to commingle them. But if I had to put it in my own words, I'd say that branding is creating a visual representation of your solution and your value proposition that resonates with your target audience. Um, that's my definition. Um, and when you create a brand, and you have to think about the brand voice and the brand message, and how that brand voice and brand message carries into your corporate identity, uh, flows into your business visualization. And this comes back to Jeremy, one of the earlier questions that was asked about brand continuum, and making sure brands integrated across the board. So um, branding again is making sure that there's clarity in who you are, what you are, and who you're serving, and making sure that that translates into all the mediums and channels and assets that you have. Marketing to me is the deployment of that message, right? It's the creation of the sales funnels. It's the creation of the sales assets. It's the creation of the sales collateral, which we started with. And by the way, whoever started us out with the sales collateral question, I'm sorry it was so early in the morning. It was the first question. I probably didn't do the best job answering that and giving you actual examples of collateral that you can use. So if you want better specific examples, I can shed light on it. But then again, it's what are you using it for, and whether it's a hard asset or a soft asset. And also, I love the briefcase effect, which is when it comes to collateral, making sure that you have assets at the ready, and you are aware of them, and you leverage them as needed. A lot of times we make the mistake, and I've been guilty of this decades ago, where we have amazing collateral, right? We have amazing sales pitches, and what we do is, when we have 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour to talk to a client, we just spend the entire time sharing those collateral. We don't take the time to slow down and ask them what their needs are, and then sharing the pieces of our collateral and the pieces of that. I might have this PowerPoint or that PowerPoint or this brochure or that brochure that may resonate more with you and your particular needs than sharing everything with you. So I like the briefcase effect. But again, marketing is the deployment of the plan, whereas branding is the clarity and understanding who your target audience is. And then marketing is the communication of that brand message, as opposed to the brand message is the clarity of who you are, what you are, and what you're doing, and who you're serving. At least that's my approach. I would venture to say that someone like Sam, our chief creative officer, would maybe even be better suited to answer that question. And this leads me to another important thing. Um, I'm a senior chief marketing officer, and I touch marketing and sales. And I like to think of myself as a mile wide and a few feet deep, right? I have this really broad life experience, business experience. I've been the CEO of a multi-specialty medical practice. I've been a lawyer. I've been a police officer. I've worked in corporate environments. I've worked in liquidations. And I have a very broad and clear understanding of marketing and how it integrates together, and now AI. And it's important to have that person that's a mile wide and a few feet deep, but it's just as important to have the people that are a mile deep and a few feet wide. And there's people that are maybe half mile wide, half mile deep. So there's all sorts of type of people. And when you're creating an engagement with an organization, I'm not Marstudio. There's a whole team of people that are Marstudio. I'm not the only consultant. There's a whole team of people that are consultants, whether it's in content, in creative, in brand message, in marketing, in digital, in development, and SEO. So you and print, you want to make sure that you're able to tap into those different specialties and understand the nuances. Because Jeremy, I guarantee you, if I went to 5 companies with bona fide internal or external marketing firms, right? And I asked them define marketing for me. Everyone's going to give a different definition.
Yep.
Is your definition of marketing academic? Did you go to school for marketing, or did you do you have like life experience in marketing? So I think those approaches are very different. And you might, if you ask Olga, my chief dev officer, how do you distinguish branding and marketing? She's gonna, I think, give you a very different answer than what I would, or give it, articulate. It's it's almost like Bible versions. There's a different translation for the words, right? They're all trying to say the same thing, but there's different translations.
Yeah.
So there's different meanings in some of those words.
Yeah. So we have around 4 minutes left, and that leaves us time for one more question. And it's from Elias. A lot of us know Elias. Hey, Chevy, great to see you, man. It's Elias, COO of AMR US. We're a commercial cleaning provider in Maryland. What kind of lead nurturing campaigns would help with moving B2B prospects through the funnel? We want to focus on property management companies.
Yeah, lead nurturing. Love the question, Elias. What's up, brother? I hope you're doing well. Um, Lead nurturing, automation. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Um, and that's part of our P5 through P 8 priorities. Automation is where I would start. And why am I saying that? Um, I'm saying that because we typically rely on people to do that nurturing for us. And that is the first step. It's important to create a very clear flow of touches in terms of what happens either pre-engagement or post-engagement. And I think oftentimes it's the pre-engagement that touches that people are focused on in terms of lead nurturing. Um, when you create the narrative, when you create the call to action and the touches, you're essentially thinking of what it is that client needs to hear or that potential prospect needs to hear. So I've emphasized this several times, and I'll go back and emphasize it one more time. It's critical to understand who your target audience is and where they came to you from to begin with. If you have different service value propositions, you may have to have different messaging in order to nurture that client through the engagement process. But ultimately, you're going to create the messaging, right? And then what you're going to do is you need to nurture them. Um, there's a time and place and a frequency that's acceptable. We can create a process and then eventually hand that process off, Jeremy, right, to an individual or a person to do it, right? Which works really well, and sometimes that's the right way to do it, especially if you're doing it through like telephony, right, where you have a person picking up the phone. But even that person who's doing that job needs a reminder of when to do that job. So if you're doing email automation, the system will do it for you and deploy the email on its own. If you're doing text automation, it's going to, deploy the text on its own. And it's going to determine the frequency of deploying that text, the frequency of deploying that email. Even if you have a human being doing it, they're going to have a task trigger that's going to light up on their board that's going to say, you need to make this phone call. I think automation is critical. Why? Because we're all human. We forget things. Um, we get sick. We get stressed. Some days are better than others. Um, and it's critical that we don't drop the ball during these periods because we can't distinguish between a viable lead and a non-viable lead, and you want to nurture them the same way until they opt out or opt in, right? So that becomes really critical in terms of the process. And then you have, on top of that, the potential to add AI into that automation. So, but let me back up for a moment. Before we have AI, we need the automation. Before we have the automation, we need the narrative. Before we have the narrative, we need the CRM, right? So there's certainly steps that are needed in order to create this workflow and this nurturing process. The CRM is critical for housing the data, right? And before you even get to that point, it's critical to have a clear audience in mind and a clear message and clear touches in mind. Then you manage them through the CRM, then you leverage the automation, and then you leverage AI, which can become the X factor and really making this, hands off. And but yeah, by the way, we're doing that for Marstudio and we're implementing some of these concepts for our clients. But you don't want to skip any of the steps that leads us to where we need to be. Hope that answered your
Well
question,
said.
Elias. If you had come a little sooner, I would have spent more time on it. But it's good to have
Well,
you.
that will wrap up our webinar for today. Before we do wrap up, though, I would like to talk about kind of just bring up Chevy's one-on-one sessions that he does offer for those that attended this webinar. So this is your chance to ask him questions and kind of, really get a strategy behind the things you may be stuck on, or maybe to even engage Marstudio in terms of helping you, with marketing campaigns. So, Marcio works with established businesses, exists a brand with an existing website and a business that generates 5 million plus. But of course, Marcio does have clients and works with clients that, um, you know, don't generate as much, but they have a fit in terms of a problem that Marcio can solve. So you can schedule your one-on-one session with Chevy using this QR code here by, using your phone to scan, and he'll be happy to speak with you. Great webinar today. We hope that you found it very valuable. Please make sure to join our next webinar in May. This is our April one, in case I said May in the start of this call. And, we're looking forward to that as well. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.